Good morning. Tom Johnson with our Mayor Alex Rounaghi for another week of Fair Game Laguna. Mayor, good to see you.
Tom, great to be with you as always.
Busy week. You had a budget discussion on
Yep.
Tuesday. Why don't you give me the highlights, the lowlights of what people can expect from their 25-26 budget?
Yeah, so I mean, at a high level, so we have a $130 million ex budget in terms of expenditures. We have a balanced budget. We're keeping all of our reserves as we should with our disaster contingency fund and everything fully funded from that perspective. Um, you know, Costs are rising faster than revenues in general. That's what, I think any individual experiences, but you look at governments across California and Orange County, and you're seeing cities deal with really long-term challenges. The good thing is that we have our budget is primarily funded by property taxes, which is the best from a stability perspective. It's the best type of revenue to have because property taxes rarely, if ever, go down, especially in a Prop 13 environment where houses are, as they're sold, they're reassessed and they go up way higher than they were when they were first bought. So that's the good news. I think my perspective is that we as a community, we're 100, in 2 years, it'll be our 100-year anniversary. We have a lot of deferred infrastructure that needs investing in. And so we just have a lot of needs that really have to be addressed in terms of infrastructure. And so what I'm supportive of, and I brought this up during the discussion, was the idea of not just making assumptions that all the expenditures that we're doing have to be done that way, and doing more of a zero-based budgeting approach where we look at, if we were to rebuild the budget today, are there opportunities for cost savings? Because if we can find those cost savings, what we can do is invest more of our money into infrastructure and deal with all of our needs. I mean, right now, we have four fire stations that are seismically unsound. We're going to finally build the fire station in South Laguna, which is so important. But we need to really ultimately, in the next few years, look at how we can have plans to make all of our fire stations seismically sound. We need to look at our as part of the sewer fund, which is an enterprise fund. We have to look at over our sewer system to make sure that we are making the investments there. Because when you have a system that's as old as ours, there are significant needs, and that's what our capital improvement program, projects. We have our library where we have $4.2 million from the county that we're looking at, making the improvements there. We just have a lot of infrastructure needs in this community, so we need to really dedicate a lot more money to that. We have fire safety needs. We have our 2025 wildfire mitigation plan had a lot of really important investments that need to be made, including more fuel modification, looking at AI wildfire detection cameras, utility undergrounding. All this costs money, and we need to make those investments because the question is not if, but when the next wildfire happens. So I'm hoping that we can, over the next few years, really put more money into infrastructure because there's just such a need. We had a discussion about pensions, and ultimately the CalPERS discount rate is never as high as they say it will be, and so that creates more of a liability on the cities. And so we have to figure out how can we be strategic in deploying our capital to deal with that unfunded pension liability. We're still in a good place, with that, but we need to just be smart about making good financial decisions that put the city on a really positive course towards the future and ensure that we're always able to, retain and attract the best and the brightest employees, and make the investments in our infrastructure and keep people safe, because that's ultimately our main job, is to keep people safe. So I'm happy with the budget. We have a great city manager who, as you know, in Newport Beach was really I think finances are what Dave Kiff is probably best at. I mean, he's really good at he's good at everything. But he brings a lot of expertise in budgeting and looking at how we can really make these long-term investments. And so that's going to be a goal, is having a long-term strategic financial plan where we can figure out what are our needs and how do we meet those needs.
So, a couple of things.
Hmm.
You mentioned our city manager, Dave Kiff. I was really impressed yesterday. I received a letter that is going to run in Friday's Stu News that um, where our city manager takes issues that have been presented to him by the community and just meets them head on. And
Yeah.
Dave's style is so good because he's like, he doesn't run, he's not running from anything. He's like, I'm here to talk to you about them. So if you have concerns, please contact me about them and let's talk about it, which is something I really like about Dave. And I would encourage people that if you don't know Dave, that's what his makeup is. So when he says reach out to him if you have a
Yeah.
problem or an issue on something, because that's the kind of guy he is. That's number one. Number two is, the interesting thing is like you talk about 100 years of Laguna Beach, the anniversary and all of that. That's so good. But one of the problems along those lines, and you were talking about it, is, in the infrastructure and everything ages.
Yep.
And like I do, is those are not inexpensive things. So
No.
to try to get your arms around them and find out over the long haul how are we going to pay for all this stuff, that money has to, yeah, okay, great. Property taxes go up, but the money really has to come from other places in order to make that happen. And I think that's a challenge you guys face. Do you agree?
I think there's no easy solution, and it's easy to come up with plans and studies that look at all the things that we need, but really at the end of the day, what it comes down to is money. And we need to make policy trade-offs about what we want to make the investments in. I think we have to, the council's looking at revenue opportunities. I really do think that we need to show the community that we are looking internally as well at expenses, because when our general fund's $97 million. I think there are ways that you could make cuts there that would, have a minor that would not really impact services by just looking at renegotiating contracts with different consultants, joint procurement, just smarter ways. How can technology be involved in all this? So I really think that it's not really, what you're seeing at the federal level is sort of an ideological attack on our bureaucracy with Doge. But the idea of that is something I'm all in on. I think government efficiency is really what we need, and we need to do it in a thoughtful way, but also an intentional way where we're actually making sure that government is efficient and that we're because we just keep going on the same trajectory, but we're not going to be investing enough in infrastructure to meet our needs. And at some point, somebody has to make those investments. And so that's my goal over the time that I'm going to be on the council. I want to be a part of making sure that we are good, stewards of this community and making those investments and putting money aside and, things that are not necessarily like sexy projects like sewer or, water reliability. At the end of the day, that's what's really important. And so, focusing on that and not letting the bright shiny objects get in the way.
So kind of switching gears a little is, we're approaching almost the half-year mark of your mayorship.
Isn't that crazy?
So tell me, it doesn't mean you're never going to be mayor again. People in town have been mayor multiple times and everything. So, but what have you learned? Is it what you expected it to be? Is it more or less? Tell me about the time you've been in it as mayor.
Well, I've had great people who've come before me as mayor. The time that I've been on council, Bob and Sue were Bob and then Sue were mayor. And so I was able to see that from their example. So there's nothing really that was surprising about being mayor. I think maybe one thing is just the extent to which people reach out to the mayor when they want to solve a problem. And I think maybe there's something to the idea of like that there's one person as opposed to, reaching out to five. I think I probably get more outreach now as mayor than I did just when I was on as a council member. Um, I think that there's just a lot more demands on my time in terms of, different events and things like that. Um, the best part about I'm really glad that we have a city manager like Dave Kipp because he's able to handle a lot of the things because I can just escalate it to the issue to him because really he's the one who's running the city day to day. But it's been such a fascinating experience to be in this role. And I also have enjoyed being, going to like being involved regionally and working with other mayors and other council members. So I think that's part of it as well. But it's just been such a fascinating experience to have. Um, and yeah, so I can't believe we're almost halfway through it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think for me, sitting on the sidelines and kind of watching you as mayor, you've brought something to the table that, maybe Hallie brings it down the road, but it's that. it's that lifetime of existence in this city. You know,
Mm.
when you talk about things are personal to you. It's like, oh yeah, no, I'm dealing with this person. That was my teacher in third grade, or I'm working with this person over here on some public safety stuff, and he was my dare officer, or you've just grown up here and you have a
Yeah.
special feeling. And I think kudos to you because it shines through. So keep up the good work. Hey, listen, it's we've just gone through some great weather. I mean, last weekend was, or early, end of last week, it was very nice outside, which is good and bad because the good
Yep.
news is everybody likes good weather. The bad news is once people find out it's good weather in Laguna Beach, guess what they do? They travel to Laguna Beach and flood our
Yep.
beaches. But that being said, good weather also dries things out, brings upon our continued watch on fire season. And I understand some of our favorite animals have returned.
Yeah, let me just first talk about what you referenced at the beginning of your question, which is the crowds this weekend were crazy. I mean, and I mean, I experienced it as well. Just as all the residents did. I mean, the amount of traffic on Coast Highway, just the amount of people coming into town. I went to the beach, the beaches were crowded. When it gets hot like that, people are going to come to the beach, and it's incumbent on the city to and we're working on how to mitigate this for this next summer because based on last summer, but yeah, it's such an important issue to deal with the impact of visitors because visitors are in the California Constitution anyone's allowed to go to the beach and allowed to park for free in residential neighborhoods, according to the Coastal Commission. And so that it's a so anyway it's I just want to make sure the public understands, the city understands the frustration because we're all dealing with that same frustration that you are. And there's not really an easy solution, but we're committed to figuring out how we can mitigate the impact of people of it so that we can keep this precious community and the beauty of our natural environment. To your question about the goats, yes, the goats are back in Three Arch Bay. And yeah, we need to figure out fuel modification is something that is really a focus of the council right now. The governor has an executive order that I think if the project starts by the end of this year, there's still we're just trying to figure out how the regulation will be implemented, but you can do a fuel modification project, get through the regulatory approvals under CEQA, the California Environmental Quality Act, without having to deal with all those regulatory barriers. And so our goal is to get more of these fuel modification projects that we've targeted started this year so that we don't have to deal with the lengthy process. So the goats are back in Three Arch, as I said earlier, but we need to,
Everybody loves the goats.
look at fuel modification for the whole community and make sure that every area is protected and that we get these zones implemented.
Well, as I said, everybody loves the goats, so it's a good thing. Hey, listen, uh, busy times, schools kind of wrapping up, a lot of people back on the streets, to start enjoying summer. Get out there, keep up the good work, and we'll talk to you next week.
Thanks, Tom. Great being with you as always.
Thank you.